Imagine dropping, like, I don't know, 25,000 pounds on a 214 horsepower Italian superbike.
Which is a complete dream machine for most people.
Right. But then you get it and you realize the factory purposefully strangled the engine and the exhaust routing is literally roasting your right leg to medium rare.
Yeah, that heat issue is brutal.
It's insane. So today we're kind of tearing down this illusion of the perfect stock motorcycle right off the showroom floor, because building the ultimate ride in 2026 isn't just this, clinical precision where A plus B equals perfection.
Well, not at all. The modern mechanical landscape is, well, it's methy, it's breathing, it's angry, and it's just heavily constrained by all these regulations. You can't just buy perfection anymore.
You really can't.
You have to actively engineer it out of a machine that comes compromised from the factory.
Exactly. And that brings us to you, the listener, and our mission for today's deep dive. We are taking a custom-tailored look at the anatomy of the perfect motorcycle ride. And we've got a formidable stack of sources to get through today.
We really do.
Yeah, we're pulling from a hands-on DSR YouTube review of a 2025 Hyper Naked Ducati. We've got aftermarket tuning telemetry from BT Moto and Terminioni, plus a massive 2025 tire test from PS Magazine and Tire Reviews.
The tire data in that one is super interesting.
So good. And we also have a biomechanical guide to rider backpacks from Ride Adventures. And to cap it all off, we're looking at an entry-level Honda from CMC Bikes. Okay, let's unpack this.
I'm really glad we're pulling from such a diverse ecosystem of sources because, well, building the perfect ride is exactly that, right? It's an ecosystem.
Right.
It's this intricate physical dialogue between factory hardware, the aftermarket software, the thermodynamic properties of your tires, and even the biomechanics of the gear you're actually wearing.
Yeah, and if one of those elements falls out of sync,
the whole physics of the ride just completely unravels.
Totally. So let's start with the beating heart of this ecosystem, the apex predator. The 2025 Ducati Streetfighter V4S.
What a machine.
Seriously. According to the DSR review, this 25,000-pound weekend toy is pushing out 214 brake horsepower and 120 newton meters of torque.
Which is just an aggressive amount of power. I mean, you are effectively getting MotoGP levels of output on a machine meant to, navigate public intersections.
Which is terrifying and awesome.
Exactly. And the electronic suite managing all that power is derived directly from World Superbike. Like, the DSR review highlighted that massive 6.9-inch TFT dash.
Oh, yeah. It's not just a speedometer anymore. It's like a full telemetry dashboard. It shows your exact lean angle, your G-force, and even the exact brake and throttle percentages you're using.
Right, which sounds like total overkill for the street.
A little bit, yeah.
But it tells you everything about the bike's DNA. I mean, it features Öhlins active electronic suspension, which is continuously adjusting the damping valves based on what the chassis is doing in real time.
Oh, wow. And it's got Brembo brakes too, right? With these huge 330-millimeter discs up front. Though I found it really interesting that the reviewer noted the brake bite on those is, they call it progressive, rather than like an immediate aggressive snap.
Yeah, and that progressive bite is a very deliberate engineering choice for a street-focused Hyper Naked.
Oh, really? Why wouldn't you want it to just bite instantly?
Because if you have an ultra-aggressive pad compound on public roads where your tires might not be fully up to temperature yet.
Right, they're cold.
Exactly. A sudden snatch of those massive brakes can immediately overwhelm the front tire's grip threshold, or it can violently upset the chassis geometry. So a progressive bite gives the rider just a microsecond to load the front tire and compress those Öhlins forks before the maximum braking force is applied. It keeps the whole bike stable.
Okay, that makes perfect sense, actually. Physically, the bike is super imposing, too. The review said it sits at about 205 kilos wet, and it carries the weight low, but it was this really tall 845-millimeter seat height.
Yeah, you have to be pretty confident it stops.
For sure. Oh, and get this, a 16-liter tank with absolutely no actual fuel gauge, just a warning light.
Just a warning light on a 25 grand bike. Classic.
Classic Italian quirks, right? But let's get to the glaring real-world flaws the reviewer pointed out, because this is where that whole illusion of factory perfection kind of shatters.
Yeah, definitely.
Despite the, intoxicating, grungy gurgle of that V4 engine, the exhaust routing practically melts your right leg in traffic, and the low rev range feels totally restricted. Now, normally, a horribly jerky low-end throttle points to a bike running incredibly lean. Are they just starving the engine of fuel at low RPMs to pass urban emissions tests?
You've hit the nail on the head. I mean, Ducati didn't design a hot, jerky bike on purpose. They are forced into a corner by Euro 5 plus emissions and noise regulations.
Right, just to make it street legal.
Exactly. To pass those urban speed cycle tests, the
Mm.
ECU map has to run the fuel mixture dangerously lean. And when you roll off the throttle, the software just aggressively cuts fueling completely to limit unburned hydrocarbons.
Ah, and that creates that harsh, jarring deceleration.
Precisely.
And what about the leg roasting heat? Let me guess, that's the catalytic converter working overtime.
You got it. To scrub those remaining emissions, the manufacturers have to use massive catalytic converters. They're these dense ceramic honeycombs coated in precious metals like platinum and rhodium.
Sounds expensive.
It is. But for the chemical reaction to actually scrub the exhaust gases, that honeycomb requires immense heat. So it essentially acts like a small, localized furnace directly under the engine casing.
That's awful.
It just sits there soaking up thermal energy and radiating it straight into the rider's leg. So the mechanical hardware is brilliant, but the factory software and plumbing are just severely compromised by regulatory compliance.
Comparing the stock Streetfighter V4S to its spec sheet is literally like looking at a purebred racehorse trapped in a petting zoo.
That's a great way to put it.
It desperately wants to run, but factory regulations are keeping it on this painfully tight leash. Which leads us to the inevitable solution for anyone buying this bike: hacking the hyper-naked.
Right. You have to physically and digitally unrestrict the machine, tackling those two exact choke points you mentioned, the exhaust plumbing and the ECU mapping.
Let's talk hardware first. Our sources point to the Terminioni D242-09400 0ITC underseat slip-on exhaust, which, by the way, costs an eye-watering $6,450.32.
It's not cheap.
Not at all. Now, they call this a semi-complete system, meaning it doesn't just swap the mufflers to make it look cool, it replaces the entire rear header section and throws that glowing hot catalytic converter straight in the trash.
And that is key. By removing that ceramic honeycomb, you eliminate the localized heat soak entirely.
So no more roasted leg.
Exactly. And without that bottleneck, the exhaust gases can actually evacuate efficiently, which reduces engine back pressure. Plus, you're replacing heavy steel and ceramic with high-grade titanium and carbon fiber.
Which drops a ton of weight.
A massive amount of weight right from the bike's center of gravity that makes the whole thing instantly more flickable.
But wait, you can't just rip the cat out, change the back pressure, and just call it a day. The bike's brain is still programmed for that restrictive exhaust. If you run it like that, isn't it going to run even leaner?
It would run dangerously lean. You're potentially risking actual detonation in the cylinders. You have to rewrite the digital parameters, and this is where the BT Moto handheld tuner comes into play.
Okay, the $939 Stage 1 Plus calibration.
Yes.
The telemetry on this tune is wild. By altering the fuel tables, it completely smooths out that jerky deceleration we talked about. And it actively drops the engine's fan-on temperatures from 220 degrees Fahrenheit down to 190 degrees.
Which is a huge thermal shift.
And the horsepower jump, it unlocks an additional 30-wheel horsepower just at the red line. It bumps the bike from 184 horsepower at the rear tire to 197 on just standard 91-octane pump gas. It literally drops the 60 to 130 mile per hour acceleration time from 5.0 seconds to 4.8 seconds.
What's fascinating here is the actual mechanism of that heat reduction. By dropping the fan-on temperature triggers and enriching the fuel mixture, the tune actively prevents engine heat soak.
Oh, because the extra fuel cools the cylinder?
Exactly. When an engine gets too hot, the intake air becomes less dense, and that directly robs horsepower. So the software isn't just adding fuel, it's managing the engine's entire thermal efficiency. Furthermore, this BT Moto handheld device completely changes the whole ownership dynamic.
How so?
Well, you aren't mailing your ECU to a shop and waiting weeks. This is virtual, at-home custom tuning. You just plug it into the diagnostic port, rewrite the fuel injector, pulse widths in minutes, and you can even flash it back to stock instantly if you need a warranty claim.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate for a second, though. We are talking about dropping over $7,000 on parts and software to fix a bike that already costs 25,000 pounds. Aren't we just paying an outrageous premium for a really expensive Band-Aid?
It's a very common critique, I'll give you that. But looking at it as a Band-Aid kind of ignores the reality of modern automotive engineering.
What do you mean?
You aren't fixing a broken or flawed design. You are unrestricting a strangled one. The aftermarket here isn't masking a problem. It's actually providing the exact operating parameters the Ducati engineers originally designed on their test benches.
Oh, before the regulations hit.
Exactly. Before government regulators forced them to put a cork in the intake and the exhaust. You are essentially paying a premium to experience the true, raw mechanical intent of the motorcycle.
That's a super compelling way to look at it, unlocking the intended engineering. But here is where the physics of the ride get truly complicated. Now that you have 197 wheel horsepower violently spinning the rear wheel, the friction coefficient required at the contact patch is completely altered.
The thermodynamic load on the factory rubber is just going to skyrocket.
Exactly. So we have to look at the tires. Our sources include a massive 2025 tire test from PS Magazine and Tire Reviews, which was tested at the Goodyear and Dunlop facility in France.
And this test is highly revealing because it challenges some very stubborn, long-held assumptions in the motorcycle community, especially regarding track rubber versus street rubber.
Yeah, they tested 12 tires on a BMW S1000RR in moderate, like 14 to 18 degrees Celsius weather, directly pitting 6 sport tires against 6 hypersport tires.
Right.
Let's talk about those categories through a slightly different lens. I like to think of a hypersport tire like a highly specialized drag racing slick. It relies heavily on carbon black compounds, meaning it is virtually useless and, frankly, dangerous until it hits a very specific high-temperature boiling point.
But once it gets there,
It acts like glue. Now, modern sport tires, on the other hand, are like advanced memory foam. Because they use high silica compounds, they are mechanically pliable at room temperature, ready to physically grip the microscopic pores of the asphalt the second you leave your driveway.
that memory foam versus drag slick analogy perfectly illustrates the underlying chemistry. Carbon black gives you incredible mechanical grip, but it requires extreme friction to reach its operating window. Temperatures you simply cannot maintain on a public road while you're waiting at traffic lights.
You just cool down too fast.
Exactly. Silica, however, remains flexible at lower temperatures and, crucially, it chemically bonds with water.
Wow, okay.
And this chemical reality was laid bare in the test data. The absolute shock winner of this entire test wasn't a track-focused hypersport tire at all. It was the Dunlop Sport Smart MK4, which is a standard sport tire.
It totally dominated. Because of that pliable compound, it required practically no warm-up time. And when they took it to the wet handling course, it crushed the competition with a lap time of 72.64 seconds.
Now compare that wet lap to the hypersport category.
Yeah.
Take the Continental Race Attack 2 Street. It relies on those high-temperature carbon black slick edges for maximum lean, and it was described as terrifying in the rain.
Oh, man, yeah. The reviewers said it acted more like a ski than a tire.
Literally hydroplaning and losing traction. It finished over 11 seconds slower than the Dunlop MK4.
And in terms of handling courses, an 11-second deficit is an absolute eternity.
It really is. It perfectly highlights the physical danger of running specialized track rubber outside of its intended thermal window.
Now, to be fair to the hypersports, when the track was dry, the Pirelli Supercorsa SPV4 took the fastest lap at 79.82 seconds. The reviewers noted its transparent feedback, like letting the rider feel the exact flex of the carcass at maximum lean.
True. But if we connect this back to the bigger picture, the test concluded something vital for the everyday rider. Modern sport tire technology has evolved so aggressively that the silica compounds now offer grip reserves that are practically impossible to max out on public roads.
Unless you're doing something crazy.
Exactly. The chemical grip of a modern sport tire has simply caught up to the mechanical grip of older track tires. So unless a rider lives exclusively on dry, perfectly paved race circuits, prioritizing the versatility, the rapid warm-up, and the chemical wet weather safety of a sport tire is the smartest, most analytical choice you could make.
So we've got the uncorked V4 engine running at optimal temperatures. We've got the Dunlop MK4 tires maximizing our friction coefficient on unpredictable roads. The machine is dialed in. But what about the aerodynamics and biomechanics of the actual rider?
This is a huge factor.
Right, because you can't exactly bolt a bulky plastic top box to a Streetfighter V4S without ruining its aero and its aesthetic. The rider has to become the cargo carrier.
And riding with a backpack at superbike speeds introduces serious biomechanical challenges. According to the guide we have from Ride Adventures, utilizing a standard backpack with traditional shoulder straps is actively detrimental to your control of the motorcycle.
Why is that? I mean, we've all worn normal backpacks on a bike before. Ride Adventures specifically says you need sternum harnesses. But what is a standard strap physically doing to you on a bike?
Let's break down the actual biomechanics of counter steering. When you initiate a turn on a motorcycle, you are actively pushing the inside handlebar forward.
Right.
That requires mobility and leverage from your latissimus dorsi and your deltoid muscles. A standard backpack pulls backward against those exact muscles.
Oh, I see.
It causes upper body fatigue, But more critically, it physically inhibits your shoulder mobility. It literally restricts your ability to apply precise counter-steering inputs.
Here's where it gets really interesting. A pivoting sternum harness, like the Kriega quad lock system they recommend, completely bypasses the shoulders. It shifts the entire load of the bag to the center of the chest and the structural ribs,
Exactly. It effectively freezes the bag's mass to your torso.
stabilizing your center of gravity. Because when you are accelerating from 60 to 130 miles per hour in 4.8 seconds, you simply cannot afford to have a 15-pound pendulum shifting your balance mid-corner.
Precisely. The gear has to match the dynamic forces of the ride. Ride Adventures highlighted the RSDX Kriega Roam 34 as like the ultimate commuter bag. It boasts a massive 34-liter capacity, which is actually enough to swallow a full-face helmet.
That's incredibly useful.
And it's constructed from 1000D waxed cordura. That 1000D refers to a 1000 denier yarn thickness, which offers massive abrasion resistance if you happen to slide on the asphalt. Plus, it's backed by a 10-year warranty. It is highly functional, premium, and built to survive really aggressive riding.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, for off-road or adventure riders, they recommend the Klim Neck Pack. It's much smaller, about 13 liters, and runs around $100.
That one is great for minimalists.
It includes a removable tool holder, which is actually brilliant because it keeps the heaviest items, like your metal wrenches, locked low against the spine, which minimizes any pendulum effect during rapid transitions. Though it is worth noting it lacks dedicated electronic protection for things like laptops, and the hydration bladder costs extra.
But again, it utilizes that secure harness system. Whether you are on dirt or a hyper-naked, unrestricting the rider's upper body is just as vital as unrestricting the engine's exhaust.
Okay, let's take a breath. We've just spent this entire deep dive exploring the absolute dizzying heights of the motorcycle world. We are talking about tens of thousands of dollars, over 200 horsepower, titanium exhaust plumbing, ECU flashes, silica compound track testing, and biomechanically engineered backpacks.
That's a lot.
It is an exercise in absolute, uncompromising excess. So what does this all mean? Does a perfect ride actually require all of this?
That brings us to our final source, and perhaps the most important reality check of this entire discussion. We are looking at a machine that proves you don't need excess to achieve perfection.
We are pivoting hard here, from a 25,000-pound Italian beast to the 2026 Honda CB125R from CMC Bikes.
Such a shift.
This bike is priced at just $4,799. It features a tiny 125cc DOHC 4-valve engine that makes just enough power for an A1 learner's license.
It is the absolute antithesis of the Streetfighter. But if you look closely at the engineering, Honda has completely refused to compromise on the chassis and components.
Despite being a learner bike.
Exactly. It utilizes a dual overhead cam layout to maximize the efficiency and rev range of that tiny cylinder. It features a Neo Sports Cafe styling and a tubular steel frame, which actually provides more communicative flex and feedback at lower speeds than a rigid aluminum superbike frame would.
And the suspension and brakes are genuinely shocking for this price point. It has full LED lighting, a 5-inch TFT screen, and radial mount brakes paired with an IMU-based ABS.
Which is incredible on a 125.
Right. Now, an IMU, an inertial measurement unit, is basically a 6-axis gyroscope constantly calculating the bike's pitch, roll, and yaw. It communicates with the brake calipers hundreds of times a second to prevent the rear wheel from lifting during hard braking. It even has genuine Showa SFF BP upside-down forks.
And that Showa separate function fork big piston setup is top-tier tech. By putting the spring in one fork leg and the hydraulic damping piston in the other, they reduce weight and drastically improve front-end feel. These are premium components on a bike that struggles to brake 70 miles per hour.
So why did we go from the pinnacle of hypernakeds to a learner bike? Because it proves that the essence of the perfect ride isn't about spec sheet dominance. It's not about throwing $7,000 at titanium pipes just so a superbike is manageable in city traffic.
If we connect this back to the bigger picture, the CB125R delivers precision, agility, and pure mechanical joy without the terrifying price tag or the heat-soaked compromises of a 200-horsepower engine.
It really is pure motorcycling.
It proves that the fundamental magic of a great ride, the physical connection to the mechanics, the lean angle, the exposure to the elements, is completely accessible at any level. You can ride a slow bike fast, utilizing 100% of its potential, and often that is vastly more rewarding than being forced to ride a fast bike slow.
That is the exact takeaway here. So, let's recap this incredible journey for you. We started by tearing down the illusion of the factory-perfect 25,000-pound Ducati Streetfighter, realizing that to truly unleash its intended engineering, we had to hack its physical and digital restraints with aftermarket tunes and exhausts.
Unnecessary evil.
Totally. Then we learned that when it comes to keeping that power on the road, the chemistry of modern sport tires like the Dunlop MK4 offers a pliable, real-world versatility that absolutely shatters the performance of specialized track rubber in the rain.
We explored the biomechanics of countersteering too, gearing up with sternum harness backpacks to stabilize our center of gravity.
And finally, we found the antidote to all that excess in the pure, accessible, beautifully engineered 125cc Honda.
It is a fascinating spectrum of engineering to navigate. But this leaves us with an important question, something for you to mull over after we sign
Oh,
off.
if they like this.
As technology allows us to push superbikes well beyond 200 horsepower, and engineers create complex electronic IMUs and chemical tire compounds that intervene to save us from our own mistakes, at what point does the modern motorcycle completely outgrow the human rider?
Wow.
If the digital safety net is doing all the work to manage the excess, will entry-level 125cc machines soon become the only place left where riders can experience a true, unfiltered analog connection with the road?
It makes you wonder. If you bolt enough perfect clinical parts onto the monster, do you eventually lose the soul of the experiment entirely? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep the rubber side down, and we'll catch you on the next one.